Good evening, everybody. Oh, loud. Better now? Thank you. It's really a distinct pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Vishal Sikka, our next keynote speaker, which is also closing keynote. And actually, it's very interesting thing about Vishal. I've known him for many, many years. And now he is the CEO of Infosys. I mean, who in this hall does not know about Infosys? If you don't know, just look at your lanyard. You are wearing Infosys lanyard that's carrying your badges. And Infosys also is a grand sponsor of TiEcon, and we are very, very happy with that. Vishal's long career started actually at SAP, where he was the part of the executive board, and he led a whole bunch of innovations at SAP, including the HANA, the in-memory database. So he's very, very well known for that. A PhD from Stanford. It's an amazing human being, a good friend. What's going to happen is that, unfortunately, Vishal, he got called away by Mr. Modi to accompany him today to be in China. Okay, well, today's Wall Street Journal's headline, okay? There is Mr. Modi in the middle, and Vishal is hiding either behind one of those pictures. So I don't know where he is, but he's somewhere. So Wall Street Journal has a big article story about him. We thought we could show him. Anyway, so what Vishal has done, because he could not make it, he has a speech, 10-minute speech. So we're going to play his speech. And following that, the panel that's going to come out, moderated by Rich Karlgaard, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay. Okay. So let's play his speech. Thank you.
Hi everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to speak to all of you at this TiEcon. It's been about a little bit more than 9 months since I started my journey as the new CEO of Infosys, and many people ask me, what is a Silicon Valley guy? Worked at Silicon Valley, went to school at Stanford, worked at SAP, was executive board member. What is this person doing at the helm of a large Indian IT services company? And I have to tell you, 9 months, a little bit more than 9 months into this job, it has been an unbelievable experience. The world of IT services is going through a fundamental and a dramatic transformation, which is incredibly exciting. One of the things that I got really excited about, well, beyond the fact that Infosys is an incredibly iconic company, which literally is one of the greatest entrepreneurial stories. Mr. Murthy, our founder, came to TiE many years ago, and Nandan, one of my predecessors, really helped. He was the man behind the phrase flat world that Thomas Friedman wrote about many years ago, which literally spawned the awareness of outsourcing into the broader world out there. But beyond that iconic nature of the company, it is the fact that being in the services industry, it is possible for us to have complete freedom in building great solutions to any kind of a problem, and then truly look into the stack below and find the most appropriate, the most interesting, the most innovative, the most relevant technologies to solve those problems. And so that freedom to be able to build great solutions for the great companies of our times was something that I found to be incredibly exciting and empowering. And beyond that, I also saw that the world of IT services is going through a great transformation itself. It is actually being disrupted. Just as there was the flat world disruption 10, 15 years ago, we are now in the middle of a disruption that is largely being caused because of automation. A lot of the work that has been outsourced in the past is ripe for automation. In fact, we are getting close to the point where anything that we can articulate, we can precisely articulate, that can be mechanizable, that can be repeatable, can be automated. And we have seen this in other industries. In fact, we have seen this trend going back all the way to the Industrial Revolution, where technology amplifies people's ability to do things, technology enables people to do more and improves our productivity, and in doing that takes away the manual, repetitive kinds of work, the routine tasks that we can hand over to systems. And the automation systems, the machine learning type systems today are no different than that long history of change that we have seen over the several hundred years. And so I see a great opportunity in the IT world to renew and transform the services that we have offered to other businesses on the basis of automation, on the basis of innovation, and renew our existing services like infrastructure management. We manage the data centers for hundreds of corporations in the world, including many of the leading cloud companies. The BPO work, the work around software verification, as well as the work around application development and maintenance and product engineering. All of you fly on airplanes where some major part or the other was designed by Infosys on every major airplane out there. And that world can be dramatically improved and transformed using automation, using new technologies like AI, and also on the basis of new kinds of innovation, where people can be managers of the automation, can be exception managers, and we can build these new kinds of automation systems and dramatically improve our ability to offer these kinds of services with more and more innovation inside them. And beyond that renewal, we see a great opportunity for Infosys to offer completely new kinds of services, things for which we never had software systems before, new kinds of next generation problems, new ways of reaching customers, new ways of going digital, new ways of designing experiences for clients that traditionally in the physical world we never had solutions for. And as more and more interconnectivity happens, more and more disintermediation of the layers between the producer and the consumer happens, there is a great opportunity to rethink many of these systems and build completely new kinds of solutions. So we are investing heavily in this area. We are investing in open source technology platforms to work to enable completely new kinds of price performance on these kinds of solutions, whether it is for big data and analytics, predictive systems, or digital systems to reach consumers and understand their behavior, offer great experiences to them, or even rethink the spaces around us. We are also investing heavily in design thinking, because beyond being services, a company like Infosys is really all about our humanity, about amplifying our humanity with the use of technology. And as I see the automation world impacting the traditional routine services that we have offered, I see a tremendous embrace of technologies of techniques like design thinking coming up, where people have to become more and more of problem finders. And at TiE, this is especially relevant. Today we live in times where entrepreneurship and being an innovator is still somehow a mystical thing. But really, when we think about it, we find that innovators are no more and no less than people who can find a problem that nobody else found before, who can look at a room and tell what is wrong with it, who come up with an idea because they see something missing in the world that is around us. That act of finding what is missing around us, that act of finding the need, is something that design thinking teaches us how to do in a systematic way. So we have been embracing design thinking in a very massive way at Infosys. We have actually trained already more than 30,000 employees in design thinking. Just this morning, as I record this video, I got the report that we just crossed the number of 30,000. So that is more than 1/6 of our population, and by far the largest adoption of design thinking ever. And we are bringing this design thinking capability also to our clients. We have now worked with more than 100 of our clients on bringing design thinking to help identify their next generation problems, their most important problems that they were never able to address before. It was funny, at Stanford we recently had a 2-day design workshop in our office in Palo Alto. By the way, as I speak to you, this is our new office in Palo Alto, right next to the Veterans Hospital. And as you can see, it is a completely new flexible workspace. Every surface that you see around me that is a vertical surface is writable. You can write anywhere, including on the glass. Ironically, the only surfaces that are not writable are the digital surfaces, yet hopefully soon there will be good enough digital technology that we can write on. But in the meantime, we enable our people to write anywhere, on the tables, on the walls, on the glass. It's a really open, constructive space with lots of opportunity for innovation, and our customers come and work with us here. Many of them have already been here. So as I was saying, we recently had one of our clients who came here with us, and it is in the CPG industry, and chocolate is one of their big products. And they were telling us that one of their biggest problems is the demonization of sugar. The fact that sugar is such a demonized institution now, that chocolate suffers because of that. And this is the problem that they were thinking about. Now, you cannot ask a consultant or a company, an applications company, to say, hey, do you have the demonization of sugar package? There is no such thing as a demonization of sugar package. You have to think about this in a completely new way and find that problem first and articulate it and then solve it. And that's what design thinking helps us do. So we are making very heavy embrace of that. And the most important part of our Renew is the work that we are doing with startups, with universities, and around our culture. And that culture is really the foundation of the Renew and New, the strategy of Infosys. At Infosys, our foundation of our culture has always been education. We are probably the most distinguished educator, most distinguished learning company in the world, not only in IT, but in any industry. Mr. Murthy used to refer to this as learnability, the ability to learn. And he always wanted to make sure that every employee of Infosys had the highest learnability. We have the greatest corporate learning institution at Mysore, our university, where we can simultaneously teach 15,000 people anything. We have a massive use of online, of MOOCs that we make in training our workforce on a continual basis, and in all our DCs in India, in delivery centers in India, we have training institutions where thousands of people can learn at the same time. So by the way, this is the educational infrastructure that we have been exercising to teach thousands of people artificial intelligence, to teach tens of thousands of people design thinking and things like that. But one of the most vital aspects of this cultural renewal is our ability to invest in and work with startup companies. And this is something that I'm really excited to share with all of you today at TiE. We are living in times where IT innovation is the future of the world, and yet IT innovation is not coming from the IT companies of the world. IT innovation is increasingly coming from startups. Therefore, one of the things that we did was establish a $500 million fund. We call it the Infosys Innovation Fund. 250 million of that is dedicated for innovation in India, and $250 million for Silicon Valley and the rest of the world, Israel, China, Europe, other parts of the world. And we want to work with startup companies. We want to amplify the reach of startup companies. We want to bring them to market. We want to help them scale themselves with our ability to do engineering and things like that. But most importantly, we want to help them grow, because the world needs more innovation. The world needs more innovation coming from startups. So we are making a very heavy investment in this area, and we are extremely excited about this. Startups in the areas of automation, artificial intelligence, next generation technologies in machine learning and so forth, in new experiences, new ways of instrumenting our physical spaces, instrumenting our bodies. Wherever there is a role of a disruptive technology to help impact business, to help improve business, we are very interested in that, in collaboration, in design, things of this nature. Many of the members of our Innovation Fund team are on site at TiE. Ritika is there. Ritika, Sanjay and Naveen will address you after my video. Abdul is there. Abdul heads all our platform work. Yusuf Bashir runs the startup fund. They're all on the ground there. And also you can go to infosys.com/innovation fund to get more information about the startup work. So I hope all of you are having a great TiEcon. It's one of my favorite events of the year. I am really excited to talk to you and to hope that you can learn more about Infosys and the work that we are doing around startups. And I look forward to working with all of you in bringing your innovation to life and to scale as we go about a great transformation of the services industry, and really a great amplification of our humanity with innovation. Thank you very much.
On Vishal's talk, the top 3 Infosys executives are here in the room, and I would like to just invite them on the stage. So first one is Ritika Suri. Ritika is the head of M&A, and she deals a lot with startups. So Ritika, would you please come take a seat? Next one is Naveen Buddhiraja. He's the head of architecture and technology. And the third one is Sanjay Rajgopalan. He's the head of design for Infosys. He mentioned Abdul. Abdul could not be here, so we have Sanjay. But engaging in this conversation is none other than Rich Kalgard. He's a longtime friend of mine. He's an amazing guy, publisher of Forbes. I'm pretty sure you all know about Forbes magazine. He also runs a show, it's called Forbes and Fox, since 2001. And Rich also is a very, very accomplished author. He wrote a book in 2004 called Life 2.0 after the dot-com bust. He said, gee, what's in life? And he took time off and traveled all around the world and wrote the book. Book became a bestseller. He wrote another book in 2014. It's called The Soft Edge. That book also is very popular. And he has his next book coming out. It's called Team Genius, the new science of high-performance organizations. So this morning you heard Jack Welch talk about leadership and management and how do you build high-performance teams. And we're going to conclude this session with another author, Rich Kalgard. So Rich, please take it away. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Vish. It was a real pleasure to meet Vishal Sikka last week in Palo Alto in those great offices that you saw on the tape, and to meet his team and to hear about the plans of this great Indian entrepreneurial company that is more and more becoming a Silicon Valley company and doing extraordinary things, much of it out of India, but much of it out of Palo Alto as well. And so we've got three of Vishal's trusted lieutenants to talk about the direction of the company. And I want to start with you, Sanjay, to talk about what Vishal meant by design thinking. How does that translate to the work that you're doing on the ground here in Palo Alto?
Sure. Thanks, Rich, for having us here. And it's my pleasure to give some more detail and color on how what Vishal said in the video is really playing out in the ground as we try to implement and execute against that strategy. Now, a lot of folks have heard about design thinking. It's a very commonly used word, and people ask me, what does that really mean? And I've evolved a definition of that over the years, which works for me. Different people define it different ways, but for our context, I like to define design thinking as a method for increasing the creative confidence. Now, that's a nice juxtaposition of words, creative confidence of individuals, of teams, or of entire organizations as they pursue large opportunities, but which are nevertheless kind of confused by ambiguity. So big organizations, it's very natural for entrepreneurs to have that creative confidence. That's part of the DNA of an entrepreneur, that when they pursue something that's new, different, that nobody has ever done before, they pursue with a sense of confidence and what you might say, conviction that they would get there. But in a large company environment, that becomes more rare. So that creative confidence, which allows you to take that risk and be innovative, is something that you actively have to inculcate within the culture of the company. And so that's something that we have been embracing, not as a niche capability for certain individuals who might be on an innovation team, but Vishal's vision here is that every single employee of the company has design and innovation as a foundational capability that they bring to their work. And this could be people who are customer-facing, doing a sales task or a consulting task or a delivery task, but it's also all the enabling functions internally, whether it's HR, whether it's legal, whether it's any corporate function. There is an opportunity for bringing designful innovation into the work that they do. And as Vishal mentioned, we have undertaken what's probably one of the largest training in the concept of design thinking and that methodology in the planet. We've trained about 30,000 people within the last 9 months or so in our company, which is clearly one of the massive efforts in training and design thinking. We're seeing some of the results of that in very, very innovative ideas coming out of our employees.
how does the shift to design thinking and moving up the value chain, how does it affect the way you organize and manage teams versus how you might have done it before you made this transition?
Right. So one of the things that we are doing on the team side, and you're right on that design thinking focuses more on the qualities and behaviors of individuals and teams, focus on the innovator, not on the innovation, because the innovations happen as a result of innovative people coming together and pursuing something that they have belief in and something that they experiment with. So we're really bringing the focus back onto the individuals, whether they are an employee who is working on an internal project or someone who's working at a client side. So we're really changing the nature of teams. We're changing the nature of individuals and the nature of teams. But where the teams really benefit is by diversity of perspective. So our teams are becoming more diverse in terms of their representation, being able to have a design someone who understands design and experiences, so building solutions and experiences, having someone who understands technology and the frameworks that really are representative of the latest generation of technologies, and having someone who represents business knowledge or commercial knowledge, so what you might call desirability, feasibility, and viability. So building teams which have that kind of mix of individuals and bring the diversity of perspectives, which then results in better overall solutions than if a team was just composed of one of those three types of persons.
And I would think layered onto the diversity that you described, there would be even other forms of diversity. There would be experiential diversity. You'd want to, I think at a creative enterprise, you'd want a mix of people who are experienced, but the downside of experience, of course, is that people can be just worn out. They become less willing to take risks over time. They've been there, they've seen that, they've done that, they've got the T-shirt, and they've got the, they can develop a kind of skeptical attitude that, as a result, balanced with newcomers with fresh eyes who have their own set of weaknesses that they can walk into traps, that the more experienced people do see. And it's that dynamic balance that seems to create the most creative outcomes.
Absolutely, and I don't distinguish in terms of someone who's experienced or not. The behaviors, I've seen behaviors of highly experienced people who behave as if they kind of mentally, they're like, ready to go, fresh, motivated. And I've seen people who are fresh out of school who are very much like jaded. So it's not, I feel the behavior we're looking for is something we call T-shaped. T-shaped as in people who do have a depth in something, so have focus, have a lot of experience or energy to go after something which is the deep part of that T, but do have a horizontal part, which is that they do understand or have respect for, or even some kind of knowledge in all the other related fields that helps them then augment their depth with a lot of breadth. So when you create a team which has T-shaped individuals, that then results in a team which can learn very fast because they learn from each other, because they have respect for the other person's expertise, and they can very quickly make progress, whether if you create a team of all I-shaped individuals, each one is trying to prove that they're smartest in the room. They're not trying to learn from the others, they're trying to push their point of view.
Well, we're going to get to the organizational learning mentality at Infosys in a bit with Naveen, but I want to ask Ritika, you have a very unique role inside of Infosys here in Silicon Valley, and that you're to inject all of this creative thinking and design thinking and fresh thinking and boost Infosys's game and the way it presents itself. You're working a lot with the Silicon Valley startup environment and entrepreneurs. Tell us how that works and then how you organize your time to go about doing that.
Well, I think I organize my time by being at Pete's and Starbucks and Stanford. But yeah, it's really exciting to see. Of course, as you know, in the Valley, there is a lot of money right now. But I think what is missing is the unique perspective of an enterprise company that can help grow, incubate, and also mentor these startups. We feel as Infosys, of course, we have announced the fund that Vishal talked about, which is the $500 million fund. In total, 250 of that we are dedicating to India for Innovate in India. However, the rest 250 is for the rest of the world. And what we are doing basically is, rather than playing in the VC world of the Valley and going for growth companies or mature companies, we started with 7 founders, $250. We feel that's part of our culture, so we want to incubate and seed and go after companies that have a brilliant idea, are looking for ideation, maturity, proof of concepts, or prototypes that a company can help build. We also feel we are uniquely positioned in the sense of, if there is a brilliant idea there, if we can't use it or test it ourselves or prove it within Infosys, in our ecosystem of partners, which is clients and other partner community, we can find someone who can be a vetting bed for these ideas. So we feel if we can connect the two, the enterprises, together with the startups, as Vishal mentioned, we are seeing more and more that the innovations that are coming for the next generation of technologies are not coming from IT companies, but from startups. So we are hoping to bridge that gap, bring these innovations together, have an incubation program. So in Palo Alto, we actually from where Vishal was talking, we feel that is a great space. We are willing to give space to people. We are doing the same in India. Let companies come in, pitch their idea, and we would help them incubate and grow those ideas.
Well, you talked about there's so much talent in Silicon Valley and in India, and but there can be a relative lack in some cases of enterprise thinking and of vertical industry knowledge. How do you get both, since Infosys is in the business of doing great software, but also doing great work for clients in different vertical industries?
Right, that's a great question actually, because we are organized by verticals and we cover most of the verticals, whether it's retail, healthcare, CPG. So to what Sanjay was saying, we've actually tried to get this deep knowledge of T individuals, so we would have a vertical expert. We go into our community of our individuals in that sector, and we've identified some people who can help incubate these companies, take them together with them to customers and imbibe all that industry knowledge with these startups and then pitch them to the companies or even do proof of concepts there. And I think that we've seen has worked out really well. We are also seeing that startups, actually we invested in a startup called Airways. It's air data quality management, and we were talking to a mining company, and that was not a use case that the startup was thinking of. So we were able to take that use case into mining where it is very prevalent.
There undoubtedly are a number of entrepreneurs in the room. How would you encourage them to work with you? What's a great process to get through the front door at Infosys?
Yeah, I think the best thing would be we put a website there. We are here at the booth. Come meet us, come talk to us. A lot of us are very interested, very eager. We think we can add value to you and help you grow. So just come to our booth or write to us on Infosys innovationfund.com page, and we'll take it from there.
Naveen, you're the head of architecture and technology at Infosys, and all three of these people are really based out of Palo Alto, and it just shows you the transformation that Infosys is making toward becoming more and more of a Silicon Valley company. But in addition to architecture and technology, you really think a lot about the organizational learning, the learning that has been captured at Infosys throughout its history, and the learning that it must undertake to move yourself up the value stream into the kind of creative design thinking that Sanjay talked about. Describe those almost sound like dual roles. Describe how you go about that.
No, yeah, I think that's right. I think Vishal talked about culture of learning that Infosys has always had. I don't know how many people have actually visited our campus in Mysore. Every time you go there, just the scale of that infrastructure just kind of boggles your mind. But I think one of the things that we are doing, and I'm going to give you kind of two examples of the kinds of things we are doing. So we actually, as I said, have a very large education infrastructure, right? But I think a lot of that had not kind of evolved in the ages, and the instruction was still very much where it's instructor-led and you kind of listen and do a course, right? So one of the things we did actually, obviously in addition to evolving the course, we are introducing a new learning platform. So I think people have heard a lot about MOOCs. Vishal mentioned that as well. But I think what we feel that actually doing that learning in the classroom, where you're actually aided by technology, actually has something very different that a MOOC can never offer, right? So it's the context where you actually are there with your co-students and actually interacting with them, interacting with the professor while actually he or she is actually teaching. That context is very, very hard to bring actually in a purely online setting. So the platform that we have built actually enables you to do that, as an example, right? So while the instructor is teaching, the student can actually interact with the instructor. They can actually interact with their peers. They can actually share the work they're doing in the class in real time. So if the instructor actually solves a problem, let's say using Java or something, the student can actually do that in another language like JavaScript or Go, solve the same problem and share it. So I think these are the kind of things that we're actually bringing into our education infrastructure, and to actually enable some of the things that Sanjay is talking, like how do you actually let our employees actually engage better with their peers and everybody, right? So that's just one example of the change that we are doing.
Since the founding of Infosys, there have been a number of major transitions in the technology and architecture of enterprise computing and consumer computing, and now we're deep into the era of the cloud. How do you go about making that transition in a company that's been as successful as Infosys has been? As Clayton Christensen and others have pointed out, that it's almost by virtue of the fact that you've been successful in a previous era that it can make it difficult to become successful when the landscape changes. And I'd love to start with you, Naveen, on that question, and then have both of you chime in on that too.
So I think, again, to me, cloud is just another of those things. What's happening fundamentally is a structural change in how we work with our customers, right? Cloud is just one aspect of that. What I mean by that is every company out there actually needs to now really lead with software, right? Previously, it used to be that you use software to actually help with your bottom line. Now, actually, software is a big part of your top line, right? And I think we need to be able to evolve to that ecosystem. I think cloud is a component of that, right? But I think the larger change is how do we bring everything that from an ecosystem standpoint, right? And what I mean by that, part of that ecosystem would come from startups, part of that come from some other cloud company, and bring that all together in the final solution that the customer wants. I think that's where really we feel that a partner like us actually brings to our customers.
Yeah, I think the answer lies in something that Vishal mentioned. People think of Infosys as a technical services company, but in essence, it's an education company. So the notion that there is a chasm which cannot be crossed, or a dilemma which is impossible, kind of ignores the role of learning and education, the fact that people can change, people can make a difference by having a kind of continuous learning culture. I think that, of course, the processes of scale tend to be different than the processes of agility. It becomes a challenge for a large organization to do both simultaneously, and you lose sight of the importance of being a learning company and being an agile company as you focus on the optimization and scale part of your core business. I think that any smart company realizes the danger in just focusing on one and not on the other. And what we're hoping is that while you get better and better at the scale activities through optimization, through the practices which allow you to deliver even better than what you have done in the past, you also see the importance of innovation, see the importance of having a nimble and agile portion of your organization which is operating under different rules, which is really exploring the frontiers, looking for new problems, new great problems to solve, and investing in other companies which are doing that. So I think that everything we're talking about around the new part of the business, which is whether it's innovation in terms of the services we already do, or looking for new opportunities, or going out into the ecosystem and investing in other companies where that innovation might be, is essentially addressing that question of how you can do both. You can have the cake and eat it too, in a certain sense, if you do focus on that aspect.
Well, this brings up the question of size and how do you size development teams? My co-author, Mike Malone, who wrote a great book on Intel last year, and I, in our own book on teams that Vish was kind enough to mention, really saw from our research that most of the productive work in the world, the really creative work, gets done by very small teams, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 people. Jeff Bezos has even come up with a term called the 2-pizza rule, that if it takes more than 2 pizzas to feed a team, maybe the team is too big. Now he's talking about informal teams, not org chart teams, but how do you create that culture where small agile teams can kind of spring up spontaneously to solve a problem or to meet an opportunity?
So I think what we did very effectively is we try to create initiatives within the company, which we call, actually fondly we call the DFV initiative, which is desirability, feasibility, and viability. And what we are asking people to do is come up with ideas, not necessarily that those people have to lead those ideas, but they can be part of a team that is leading the idea as well. So I think first is about inculcating this culture of generating ideas and not focusing just on your day-to-day job is a very important initiative that we've started within the company. Also, I think making sure that people are rewarded and not penalized for being agile is another shift in culture that you have to do. So you have to inculcate the culture of learning, failing, iteratively. That's also a key principle of design thinking. And actually, I wanted to touch on something, the previous question that you were talking about. We've also had this thing. We talk about our strategy being renew and new. So in both dimensions, for the renew part of the business, we are looking at ideas that are actually looking at things that we are doing today and optimizing those, and then new aspects of the business that are also related to the core of the business, which is the services business, so next generation of ideas. So.
I have a question for all of you that relates, and we just have a couple minutes left, so I'll make this the final question, and all of you can chime in. And a startup has the luxury of being able to experiment, and if its software is not perfect, it usually finds the kinds of clients and customers in the beginning that are willing to work with less than perfect software that can be fixed along the way. Now, if you're Infosys, you have this sterling global reputation, and people have this high expectation that your stuff will be hardened and ready and enterprise ready and bulletproof from the get-go. So how do you? I guess is the question. Each of you can take a swipe at it in the 3 minutes we have left. That you walk that balance where you get that agility and the kind of forgiveness of mistakes that you must have when you have agility, combined with this great reputation that Infosys has for doing projects right.
So I think there are always two kinds of things we're doing, right? One is the stuff that you're already very good at, and you're primarily focusing on improving it, making it better, right? Those are the areas where you actually want that stability, as you referred, right? A lot of the new stuff, I think people are much more where you actually see the startups actually being there. So the reason people are forgiving to startups is because they are mostly focusing on the new side of things, right? And that's the experience we are seeing as well. As we do more and more of the new stuff, the interactions we had with our customers is very similar.
And I feel it's a combination of the message and the medium. I think what happens is we tend to confuse the two, or we assume that we have no flexibility on the medium and we just have to focus on the message. And what I mean by that is the appearances and the trappings are very important when you have a conversation. It's embodied in the way we dress. You can see, we're not in kind of jackets and ties. This is the way we are in Silicon Valley, but this is the way we always are. But also, Vishal talked about our workspace being open. It has an unfinished look. Looks like a warehouse. It feels like there's lots that can happen experimentally there. It's also the artifacts that we create. If you tend to create artifact that looks finished, the expectation is that it works perfectly. But if you create an artifact for discussion, which is a prototype, which is an early prototype, which has the appearance of actually being a conversation piece and not a delivery piece, then that artifact that you're sharing leads to a different type of strategic conversation. So I think it's a part of it is that culture where you start understanding that for Infosys and companies like that, we need to start having conversations earlier in the cycle, and we need to bring to that conversation the medium and the messages which then are relevant for that stage of discussion. That immediately changes the mindset. I'd give a quick example. We decided to do an early presentation to one of the senior executives of a company, and we were going to go in and kind of present a new idea. We used the design thinking methodology on how we should actually approach that particular meeting. Typically, we would have gone in and done a PowerPoint presentation. Instead, what we decided to do was to do a poster session. We decided to go into a room and take out all the chairs and tables from that room, so it's a standing discussion. We had a big whiteboard to one side, and that whole discussion, just because we changed the medium, even though the stuff that's on that poster was maybe similar to what we would have put on a PowerPoint, the nature of that discussion was different because the person coming in suddenly saw a different type of method of interaction, which was more collaborative.
Yeah, that's very ingenious to change people's expectations through those kinds of methods, and I can endorse the really cool-looking quality of your Palo Alto headquarters right behind Gunn High School. Final thoughts, Ritika?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that, that I think the fundamental thing that we are not changing in that is the value. So to your question that, can you be forgiven? Yes, you can be forgiven if you're still adding value, creating value. So whatever we do, we make sure that we are coming at from an end value, end user, end consumer perspective. And that's the part we don't change.
Well, let's give our panelists a big hand.
Thank you.
On very short notice, after Vishal Sikka was invited to accompany Prime Minister Modi in China, these three agreed to step up and be part of the live presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.